And welcome to another edition of the Long Game Podcast here in the H&N Digital Center. Today's guest, Dr. Jason Keifer of Brain Health Hawaii. Doctor, we're doing something a little bit different with this podcast. Usually we interview active athletes, former athletes, pro athletes. I'm not saying you're not an...
Or wannabe athletes. Yeah.
You seem athletic and in shape, okay? But I wanted to bring you in because the work that you're doing with Brain Health Hawaii and the advancements and improvements in that area, in that sector with Hawaii's sports community has really been remarkable. And I want to shine a light on it and talk about some of the extensive work that you guys do. So Dr. Keifer, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so we first spoke 2021, 2022. It was a story with pro surfer Mikey Red O'Shaughnessy, who was involved in this horrific accident at Pipeline. Basically, it was during a winter swell, had his head slammed on the reef, knocked unconscious, had to be brought back to life. We interviewed him shortly after that injury, and he was in bad shape. He was out of it, severe concussion, light sensitivity. He was talking about the mood swings, the depression, everything that comes with that. A year later, after he starts working with you, we talk with him again, a completely different person.
Wow.
And he is literally brought back to life. The synapses are firing again. As we dive into all of this, let's start with this. Explain to me the foundation of Brain Health Hawaii.
Well, the foundation is, first of all, just thinking about where kind of mental and physical health reside and how it interacts with brain function. It's kind of like trying to get more to the root of issues and root of performance. I think, I guess you were mentioning Mikey as a perfect example of a guy who's physically in shape, everything's moving along, and something unfortunate happens and it disrupts brain activity. So the root is, what do we need to do to take this person, whether they're, way below and need to bring them back, or just a little bit below where they need to be, and optimize that by improving and enhancing brain function and brain activity.
What was the treatment that you used with him that really helped?
Well, I think it's really interesting to take. Like when I first showed up, I had, it was such a blur, how many years of COVID, and thinking back when I just walked in here, you were kind of mentioning how we met back then when you interviewed Mikey, and it took me back a bit to think about how he was in such bad shape, and it speaks to what our mission is like thinking about how the brain affects all systems. And so I had no sort of like baseline understanding of where he used to be physically. I could kind of gather based on the things that he did, but now seeing him healthy and how much better he looks, like he was probably 20 to 30 pounds underweight. Like you said, he was, cognitively, mentally struggling. And so what we needed to do is to really look at some of the basics of reestablishing healthy rhythms, the technical terms like circadian sleep, circadian rhythm, look at some other functional tests, as well as looking at his brain activity, and just kind of just bringing the brain back online, getting it firing again after being so incredibly disrupted by the massive impact that he suffered. Because he suffered, a borderline to basically a lethal hit to his skull. And then he passed out, so he was hypoxic for a time. So that's another form of brain injury. So he had quite a bit of disruption. And so the treatment was just to do everything we could around the brain and with the brain to sort of bring it back together, to basically re-strengthen the brain connections.
So the technology Brain Health Hawaii specializes in, it's called, what is it, transcranial?
Yes, it's a form of neurostimulation,
okay,
which is using gentle magnetic pulses to get the brain cells or the nerve cells to begin firing together again. So lots of people are familiar with, muscular stim units that have been used for a long time in health and training and recovery. And in many ways, it's a similar type of concept where, with the muscular stim units, you're using more of like a direct electrical current to get the muscle cells to synapse and fire together. And we're basically doing the same thing with the brain and the brain activity by using these gentle magnetic pulses. I mean, gentle, like for people, many athletes have had MRI, and it's kind of you can, sometimes people can sense or feel the energy that's being used. This is about maybe a tenth of that energy, 10th plus. So it's a really soft magnetic pulse.
Mm-hmm. How long have you been working in this field?
Well, I've been a physician and then a child, adolescent, adult psychiatrist since 2004. And so my evolution into sort of working with athletes, it's kind of a natural progression. Always liked working with people. I think large part because that was part of our household. We were either playing something in the backyard. If we weren't, we were watching some football or basketball or baseball or something on television. So just kind of growing up around that, and then becoming practicing doctor, and then over time seeing some of the differences in presentation and treatment response to people who had just sort of like had mostly sort of like mental health history, like depression, anxiety, PTSD, and then seeing this subpopulation of people who over time were athletes who were going through adjustments, maybe had some anxiety and depression, but didn't necessarily have that chronic mental health history. And then over time, just trying to figure out what that was. And then also at the time, I had a small, early on, 2008, 2010, started to gradually begin to work on the sports performance side. And so then it's just kind of been an evolution from there.
Before the work of Brain Health Hawaii really started picking up, what would you say, what did the course of treatment look like, let's say for stuff like anxiety, depression, concussion, before you had the technology that you employ?
Well, so that's part of the evolution, right? Is using the standard tools of child, adolescent, adult psychiatry. Was there's cognitive, there's behavioral, there's motivational type counseling and performance enhancement. There's and treatment, and then there's medication, right? And so that was kind of the initial application with kind of this athletic subpopulation as to because as much as we're all similar, human beings in terms of like our bodies, our brains, and all of our systems work, there are some differences, I think, and I think that's what I always wanted to do, is try to figure out how do I develop my craft, how do I develop my trade, to figure out these differences over time. And what I began to see over time was that many of these subgroups that were basically like the athletes and the high performers, they weren't responding to a lot of the things that we were doing. And who knows, maybe that was a limitation of mine, or it was just the fact that they weren't responding. Although we tracked, the idea is like you treat, you test, you track over time, and you follow your outcomes. The idea is to come up with a model that is practical, effective, and then also predictive.
Was the previous model medication heavy?
Certainly more than it is now. And I think that's what I saw. I began to really see it, because I mean, again, the nice thing about amateur to professional athletes is there's a certain level of activity, demand, discipline, and routine that kind of forms a really good structure. And so in that structure, these are the kind of people that were really giving me incredible feedback. I tried that medication and maybe that helped me a little bit here, but the side effect is holding me back when I go to train or do these different things. And so I think that was probably one of the big limitations of that approach was, while it may have helped some with some aspects of it, it was not necessarily helping with the performance side, and because the side effects may have been actually getting in the way. And so that's when things started, probably somewhere between 2010 and 2015 is when I really, now these are all things that are now more scientifically proven and validated, but at the time I was trying to figure out what is this whole like sleep and brain connection, and maybe there are other things I need to be looking at that would potentially improve the situation without me having to introduce something that might cause side effects. And so that adding that focus or something to look, a way of looking at the brain body connection and the mind body connection really opened some doors and some windows in terms of like being able to help, more people, more athletes, actually more patients to sort of make gains quicker. Again, a lot of this sounds kind of like intuitive now because I think sleep is certainly, at least in the medical world, is more of it's a common theme. It's an accepted theme, and more people are focused on it. But back then, it was kind of an idea that was just reserved for sleep specialists. But as a psychiatric and brain specialist, what I started to do is reach out to specialists that I knew on the mainland that were in that space and kind of cross discipline, trying to integrate that. So fortunately, I suppose like if you talk to anybody who's trying to advance balls in whatever they're doing, it's like really relying on really good teachers and really good mentors to help you connect those dots and advance. And so in integrating sleep was a big step in sort of increasing the effectiveness of what we were doing for athletes.
What would you say was the aha moment for you, where you found the right combination of a treatment that could be non-invasive, have the desired effect you're looking for without the dramatic side effects?
That's a really good question, because if I think about it, it's hard. It would be very hard to pinpoint like one moment. I think because as a physician, as a scientist, as a clinician, so much of it is gradually integrating things over time with individuals, and tracking your feedback, tracking their response. And so I think, as much as I'd like to say there was an aha moment, I think it's more of a process over a long period of time of tracking thousands and thousands of people and hundreds of athletes and really following that feedback along the way, just looking for what's going to give us the best outcome, and then identifying various patterns of people and physiology and trying to over time match that. And we're, constantly trying to refine that over time.
When somebody comes to Brain Health Hawaii for the first time, and it could be for a number of reasons, right? Concussion, sleep problems, anxiety, depression, what is the process that you take them through?
We would take them through an interview to get a history, and then we integrate some testing of brain activity, and reviewing that and looking at sleep metrics, physical routines, sleep routines, medical history, right? Because whether you're a patient or an athlete, people are coming with their unique medical histories, and these medical conditions in different areas of the body sometimes have an impact on brain function and mental and physical performance. The treatments for those medical conditions sometimes can as well. So it's really just looking at the person comprehensively, holistically, taking a brain map, looking at the brain activity, and then usually doing some additional baseline testing, and then just moving from there.
What are some of the different treatments that patients come in, or some of the symptoms that they describe coming in that you can address?
Yeah, well, I think when you're thinking about, I think about what most of the athletes come in with, it's different subpopulations. Like there's those that it's just a very clear, post-concussive disruption. Those folks can present with headaches interfering with their performance, sleep disruption, mood, anxiety, cognitive focus, performance anxiety. And then, so I think I'd probably look at it like there's the clear concussive to subconcussive history, and then there's those that maybe there has been some wear and tear, but it's not an obvious concussion related brain and performance disruption. And those are probably the two main categories or patterns of athletes that are showing up. And then just kind of, like I said, doing the assessment and kind of adjusting and tailoring the treatment to sort of suit the needs and the goals of what they're shooting for.
Concussions have become more into the forefront, and there's definitely greater attention paid to it now. When the CTE started popping up in the mid to late 2000s, I mean, it's been around, but the awareness of it really popped up. Put into context for us, when a concussion happens, what occurs to the brain?
Well, in the short run, there's the brain connection, so the electrical signaling is thrown off. So think of it like going from if you're in your car listening to the radio and you hear a clear song and then you pass through a tunnel. Well, nowadays, I think maybe the reception is much better, but in the old days, you drive through a tunnel and suddenly you wouldn't hear that song or the music. So that's a disrupted connection. That's a signal connection. In the same way, that's happening in the brain on some level. I think the NFL has done some really good studies looking at, I think they call it the shake sign. So it's like any impact that leads to a temporary lightheaded or dizziness or leading to them wanting to shake their head correlates with enough of an impact that's disrupting the signaling. So you get a electrical signaling disruption. And then shortly after that, as much as we talk about neurons, there's many other cell lines that have a role in the brain that are then activated to try to respond. So think of the activity in the brain, not unlike a knee or an ankle, right? If you twist or you sprain, there's an inflammation reaction. So there's an electrical disruption, there's an inflammation reaction, and then there's an energy demand. So energy meaning like ATP, sugar turnover. So you start to get imbalances in all three of these areas that can basically cause or contribute to a lot of the dysfunction or drop in performance or symptoms that people experience. And inflammation, short-term inflammation is good. It's the long-range inflammation, just like in your joints. And so with that, over time, you're carrying an increased risk for mood issues, anxiety issues, focus issues, sleep issues, headaches. And then with each successive impact, I think we're finding out more and more that there's an accumulative effect.
It's terrifying.
Yeah, I mean, it's really tough, because I grew up in Omaha, Nebraska. It's like football country, and definitely see the value of collision and contact sports in terms of the locker room, the camaraderie, and that process of working with a bunch of people and grinding it out, physically challenging yourself. But it's also good at the same time just to be aware. We can't put kids in a bubble, but it's important to be aware of what may be happening more often than we think, and to be aware of that, because I just think back to guys that I grew up with, and it's pretty clear. You can see, like, if you just think about the historical archetypes of the dumb football player. Like, I don't know, I'm around a lot of football players at all levels, high school, college, pro. Like, a lot of these guys are really, really smart. It's like, I don't think it's an IQ thing. I think in all likelihood that archetype or that rep is actually just likely more of like what we used to think of boxers in the 1900s being punch drunk, right? It's just that their brain isn't firing as well as it could or should, which means although they're smart and they're disciplined and they're structured, they can be focused. To show up consistently that way when you're carrying a subconcussive load becomes harder and harder and harder over time.
Some of your notable patients include, and they're very public about this, so we're not betraying any confidence area, Mikey O'Shaughnessy, pro surfer, Carissa Moore, Jesse Sapolu, famed stuntman Tunnel I. Reed. Walk me through, what are some of the extraordinary cases with them that you've seen and the progression that really stood out to you?
I mean, I think the like I said, the really neat thing we talked about earlier is just the nice thing about working with a lot of these folks that are high performers, again, is they're really in tune with where they're at. When I'm working with kids that are athletes, which we see some really cool things, that's really hard to get solid feedback with them. They're still learning about their bodies and where they're at. You have parents that would give you good feedback. But,
So when these people,
so think about these people individually, like you see, just really them getting back to what they're capable of,
because they just know something is off.
Yes, they did. They know it, and they've historically been able to train their way out or into where they want to be, and they're grinding these things out, and they're not getting the return on that. And so whether it's someone refers them in, or they just kind of figure out on their own, they come in, and it's really just kind of like just fine tuning. Again, it's not recreating something. It's not creating something from scratch. Like most of these people you mentioned there, I mean, they're Ferraris, brain wise and physical wise. So it's just getting all those connections fine tuned again, and then they can get back into being in the zone more times than not. And then it's a cascade of positive things for them. And then like the thing about those people specifically, like those are people that are not only doing really neat things themselves, but they're also like contributing a lot to the community. So I think that's really cool. It's not just to help them athletically, but then to see now they've got more left in the tank to go out and do their work in the community and the various things that I know each and every one of those guys and gals are involved in.
How much, from a career spent in brain research, what is the percentage you would estimate that, we don't know about the human brain? How much more is there left to be discovered?
Far more than what we know. I mean, I think when I was growing up, now looking back, we looked at this thing we looked at it like a black box, right? It was like you stuck with it. Whatever it is, you just stuck with it. It is what it is. And now you fast forward, I'm 51, so you fast forward in the last 10, 20 years, we now know that that's just not true. Like, there's, like I mentioned earlier, there's a tremendous amount of activity. There's a tremendous amount of growth potential. And also as things are evolving, we're figuring out ways to improve even after it's been disrupted. And I think what's left to learn is to continue to fine tune. There's a depth of learning to learn about exactly, because it's this massive network that I don't know if we'll ever truly understand all of it, but keep pushing. And then there's just the ways in which we can learn to identify when things are starting to go wrong or offline earlier rather than later. Yeah, I think that's really where it's going and where it should go, because it's like any other part of your body, right? I mean, I'm thinking about any of the young athletes that I worked with, where it's like they're now going through physical therapy, but for different musculoskeletal things, and it's clear when you talk to the physical therapist, like, oh, probably if we had done that earlier or even ahead of time, we may not have had the injury in the first place. So I think that's where the advancements go, is like what are the things we can continue to do to identify and intervene earlier. And I know there's some really cool things on the horizon. I can't really talk about in terms of the future of what we described as kind of read or map and treat technology that's sitting on some engineers' desks on the mainland that hopefully one day I can work with some people to drag that here, because I think that's probably the future. Yeah.
I know I keep going back to concussions, but to just think that it's only been 15, 20 years since concussion awareness in the NFL and soccer has really picked up.
Yep.
To think that we've had decades upon decades of research that was just not paid attention to or respected.
Yeah.
It's mind-blowing to me.
Well, I think the tide is turning. I think it's, the more that neuroscientists and medical researchers and clinicians and physicians are really sort of collaborating. I think the science is there already. It's just now a matter of disseminating and integrating into like teaching and training over time.
What's an area that the treatment at Brain Health Hawaii even surprised you as to where like it actually made improvements on that? A symptom perhaps that you didn't expect that there would be some positive gains?
I think the So the performance side made a lot of sense to me early on, because so if you think about what performance means, right? Athletes talk about being in the zone. Well, as much as we've always thought that we've described the zone as a mental space, what we've seen is it's actually directly related to the physiology or the alignment in the brain. So if your brain is what we describe as coherent or lined up or really efficient in the connection, well, those are people that happen to just almost like intuitively get in the zone. Or like some of the athletes that I've worked with, they'll just describe like, this is, I'm seeing angles well in advance. I'm not even thinking, I'm just doing, that's the zone. So for me, that made sense right out of the gate. I think a few things that have stood out to me is thinking about how the treatments that we use have really shown a lot of effect in like performance anxiety, or even some of these athletes that have maybe, whether it's head trauma or psychological trauma that maybe is in the way, and to see that really improve significantly was, I wouldn't say a total shocker, but really a pleasant surprise, because, anxiety or worry is such a common symptom for people and athletes that, and I'm also thinking specifically about the special operator population that we work with, because I mean they're basically professional athletes, and so to see them improve in that area.
Special operator is defined as
like military special operations. I mean, these guys are basically professional athletes, the way that they challenge their brain and their bodies, and so to see those anxiety or dysregulated brain activity that's correlated with anxiety, performance anxiety, or even PTSD, to see that significantly improve has really been a nice surprise.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
So you're talking about people that are suffering from PTSD, anxiety, depression, or hidden psychological trauma.
Yeah, like the performance anxiety as well. Yeah, all of it. Yeah, because it's like, the mind is, I grew up early as a doc and a physician studying the mind and the symptoms of sort of the mental cognitive symptoms. But at some point, I think it was sort of figuring out that and seeing the value of restoring sleep and circadian rhythm and what that did to the quote unquote mind. But the reality is it's affecting the brain, right? You're impacting the recovery and the strength of the brain, which then, so it's like, okay, where does that mindset or where does that mental or cognitive strength come from? Well, it comes from the strength or the freshness or the efficiency of those brain connections. So it's like making that connection is really been neat, because you can, where sometimes we see the things that we're able to see now are performance, mood, anxiety, sleep changes and improvements in a fraction of the time using the previous tool set. So it's like, there's an opportunity gain within a short period of time. Yeah.
The sleep aspect and the amount of sleep, I feel like, is a through line for a lot of great professional athletes. You talk about the great professional athletes, they always say they're constantly napping, or it's a non-starter. You have to get 8 hours of sleep at least every night.
It is the physical and mental advantage. It's like, that's kind of like the concrete and the rebar, building a house. Like, that's going to set the foundation for everything else. And there's a certain percentage of improvement you're going to get just from doing that. It's not just the amount of sleep. It's what we describe as the window of sleep. So, if you're sleeping 12 midnight to 8 a.m., that's not even close to as good as sleeping from 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. So there's this window of time. It's the optimal sleep window that helps, because your body has multiple systems that kind of running on clocks that are coordinated. And in order to keep those clocks and those gears in sync, that window of time is beyond valuable if you're looking to optimize your sort of brain and mental performance.
Kind of seems to back up those studies that say those that spend years working a graveyard shift,
no question,
takes years off their life.
Yeah, it absolutely does. That's There's just no question about that.
Right. Your innate rhythm is completely thrown off.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's been such a growth in popularity of youth sports, especially in Hawaii, and your clinic is out in East Honolulu, so you see it all the time.
Yeah.
What should parents know about youth sports and its relation to brain health and the physical side effects that can come with that?
Well, I think, not to beat a dead horse, but the sleep is big. And I know that, what I'm about to say is I'm probably failing on it at least 20 to 40% of the time, but it's this goal of trying to protect the kid's sleep as much as possible. And, the beauty of Hawaii is the youth sports community. Like it's this wonderful thing. I think, growing up in the mainland, you see youth sports are big, but the culture of Hawaii is not like the culture of Hawaii is very unique in the way that it's like people aren't climbing over each other here as far as like if people are actually working together here, which is really neat. So it's this cool family oriented process. So that's a huge plus. But there is a lot of practice. There's a lot of skill development, which is great because I think that's probably why, if you think about it, like Hawaii disproportionately is sending for population capita, like the number of people we have here. I think we send probably just as many, if not more, people to Division I and professional sports than most states, I think. So, but I think a lot of it has to do with the community, a lot has to do with the people, has to do with the emphasis on skill development, which is fantastic. But there can be a cost to that. In other words, if you get into bed too late, you might be unintentionally holding your kid back from really integrating all of the really good practice and lessons they're learning. Right. So I think at the highest level of athletics that I worked with, whether it's NFL or MLB or surfing, you can see that as it plays out and physiologically, like you need that sleep, and kids are more vulnerable to it. Adults are developed. So maybe you can get by a little bit, but as the brain is developing, it's not as myelinated. That sleep debt may be interfering with the consolidation and the uploading of all the mental and, physical coordination, development and connections that need to be made in order for that kid to over time develop into who they're supposed to be.
Should we think of sleep like, smartphones are omnipresent now.
Yeah.
That we need to charge our mental smartphone.
Yeah, your battery. Charge your battery.
Right.
Yeah, well, I'm not an IT guy, but we opened a clinic in Silicon Valley. I was around a bunch of tech guys. So as I'm describing, they're like, oh, so you're saying I need to defrag my hard drive, charge my battery? Yes.
Exactly. That's what we're talking about.
Yeah. You're going to overheat. And when so that's the thing, adult athletes know. Feedback's there. They'll tell you. They'll see it. Kids, it's their first pass through. They don't even know. Everything's just normal to them. No, if it's not done, so they're just going to continue to integrate. And I think if you're looking for all the parents out there, I think if you're looking to really help your kid enhance their game, it's shoot for that 8 p.m. bedtime, which is hard. And if it happens to be 8:39, you're still a heck of a lot better than starting at 9, because then again, you're starting to miss that. You start that because you start at 9 and next thing you know, it's 9:30, 10. So you're starting to miss that optimal physiologic window for growth and development and integrating all of the things that you've been practicing.
From your experience, the sports that you've seen that have the most instances of impacts to the head and the brain? Football's the number one still.
Football, soccer, wrestling. Those are the first three that come to mind. Baseball's a bit of a sneaker. That's not as common, but there's beans, there's tags, there's things like that. But it's mostly, say, football, soccer, wrestling, and it could be also these. I mean, statistically that shows up, in the literature, but you also start to think about the number of participants. So that's also what we're going to see is, there just aren't as many kids wrestling. But so I think of wrestling also grouping like combat sports, mixed martial arts, right?
When a patient comes to see you, how long is the course of treatment?
It varies. Usually if it's more performance related, again, you're just kind of fine tuning. Treatment's not as long, maybe 4 to 6 weeks. If it is more, head injury, brain injury, concussive related, that may take a little bit longer, 8 weeks, sometimes plus, depending. Or like in Mikey's case, it also depends on how soon, right? The sooner we get to it, generally speaking, the more likely it is to respond with fewer and shorter treatments.
No, and it's huge to see that there's been a boost in awareness of the need to increase performance.
Yeah, no, and so I was thinking about the question you asked earlier about what are some examples of some of the improvements that you see? And I think a couple of things that there is one that surprised me. It was when so there's a certain amount, obviously, that your vision, your visual clarity starts here. And I'm not an eye doctor, obviously, but the eyes capture what you're seeing, light, basically, but the brain actually is what turns that into the picture. And so it's no longer surprising, but initially it was when I would have people describe that they felt like their vision got tighter, more clear. Like the baseball player saying, "Yeah, I feel like it looks like I'm picking up every stitch in the seams earlier, better." Or if I think about some of the football guys, because again, if you've taken hits or you've worn down the cells in the back of the brain, those are the cells that take that signal from the eye and turn it into either, think of it like a pixelated picture to like high def. So if you respond to what we're doing, then you're going to move the brain activity into a more coordinated high def status, and visual clarity and visual reaction time can increase significantly. So like golfers can give me really good feedback on that because of the way football, baseball, some of the tennis players, and then also that reaction time. It really kind of solidified. We used to think of, when we were younger, we think about like fast twitch muscles, but really it's that neuromuscular timing and efficiency that will be the rate limiting step. Like you could have the great fast twitch muscles, but if you can't get them working together, quicker, then there's going to be some limitations there. So it's seeing people objectively improve their measurable times, reaction times, shuttle times, and then also just kind of like subjectively describe what they're noticing.
And this isn't even without, let's say for a sprinter, for example, they're going to see improvements in their times. You're going to do the physical training, but just fine tuning that, bringing your brain into 4K.
Correct.
Is what's going to help you expand even more and really enhance that coordination.
That's what we see, right? I mean, so it's the driver, it's the relay center, it's the driver, at that, especially at that high level, right? I mean, once you start getting into the sort of the higher level, high school competitive circuit and beyond, really does come down to who. Most people are physically developed at some point. And so it comes down to that reaction time, right? That focus and the reaction time is and the ability to keep showing up consistently, being coachable, being responsive, being able to put in the work ahead of the actual competition. And then that reaction time over time is what gives them the advantage.
Are you hearing of more and more professional athletes across the country and around the world start to use some of the treatments that you employ?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I think one of the what were we watching? My kids love football. They keep asking me to play. And I'm like, well, okay, maybe if you grow, but I'm 5-0, 100-0.
Not happening for my kids. I'll say that right now.
So yeah. I'm trying to push that on it. We were watching, it was one of those Netflix documentaries.
The quarterback one?
Yes, that was it.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see, while they're not, the many of them, at least publicly, are inching their way there with various neurofeedback and neurostim, like home units. And so, and I know behind the scenes that more and more are. Most people aren't necessarily talking about it, but it is really cool to see, because I think, again, that's especially with football, right? Because I think as much as we all love watching these supreme athletes compete and really get after it and have fun and play fantasy and all that, it's even better to see them take care of themselves, I think, for after.
Yeah.
Right. So we can, because there's nothing worse than seeing, some of these occasional news stories or news clippings where you see guys 5-10 years out of the league and you can tell that they're spiraling. And I think in most of those cases, it's an accumulation of head injury and altered brain function.
Repeated hits to the head.
Yeah.
It's different from MMA and wrestling, where you'll have a match and you train, but football is constant, especially depending on what position you're playing. If you're on those trenches over there, it's awful.
But I think it's important. It is great that we spend as much time talking about football, but these things kind of, we're not the same in terms of our vulnerability to these things, right? Like, and I think we're beginning to figure out some things, like why some people might be more vulnerable, but it's not fully established yet. But in the end, there's individual risk. Like I could think of, there was a college baseball player I was working with not too long ago, and he had the yips. So 20 years ago, I would have thought, this is just a mental thing, right? If you know the yips, where you go to throw and next thing you know, the ball is not headed to second base, it's in the ground, even though this is somebody who's made that throw probably 10,000 times. And this guy was a catcher. And I think we were able, once we looked at the brain activity, we could see altered connections in the area of the brain that coordinates your what's called the somatosensory or neuromuscular coordination, and a little in the frontal region as well. And I think what we were able to narrow it down to is this guy's a catcher, and how many times has he taken 95-mile-an-hour tip balls to the head, right, and shook it off. And so the cool thing I think that was maybe 1 to 2 weeks of treatment. And it was like, boom, right back. Yips gone, seeing the ball better, feeling his body better, and haven't needed to do anything since. So I think, again, if you're thinking, if there are parents out there, it's like, certainly football carries a significant risk, but these impacts can occur in any of the sports. Yeah.
And also, too, from what you're describing, parents can consider that if they're seeing a problem out there, that there's a solution that's in the brain, literally, that can be worked out.
Yeah, it can be. I mean, in many cases, I think
the mechanics of something.
I think it's worth taking a look at, and I think, as if we're thinking about parents, which I know you are, and it's not always easy to connect those dots as a parent, but if you're starting to see a clear drop off in performance or focus or school or things like that, again, like historically, 20 years ago, like, the kid's depressed or that kid's ADHD. Well, maybe they are, but maybe there's other things going on that have maybe there wasn't one major knockout blow, but a series of small ones sometimes that can disrupt, or sleep disruption as well. I think we're learning more about what screen use, which now it's schools now on the screen, so it's inevitable screen use can do to sleep and inflammation and brain activity over time. So sometimes it's not even an actual collision. Sometimes it's just an additive effect of a low level sleep deprivation and other things over time that are kind of throwing the neural functioning and neurodevelopment off, if that makes sense.
Yeah, completely. I was going to ask you, what are some of the things that we employ in daily life that not necessarily a blow to the head, but
I think that's a big one because
screen time.
it's such, I know early on in my career as that was coming out, I was always thinking it was just like, I would describe it as a displacement effect. Like if my kid's using the screen and they're not outside integrating, that is true. But I think, and then if they're using the screen at night, it's because they're not sleeping. Yeah, that's true as well. But I think the real hidden risk that I think that is begin to be improved, proven over time, and is that the unnatural light that is actually coming from the device itself is impacting cortisol levels, impacting melatonin levels. So again, that is another drip over time during a period of critical development for kids, critical development for athletes who, again, because of their practice schedules, their sleep already might be off. So I think one thing we can do is to just be aware of that, and as much as possible, cut off screen use maybe after like 6 p.m. And if they are going to use it, make them use it outside, because the kind of like the full spectrum or natural light can kind of dilute or drown out the effect of just kind of like the unnatural spikes of light that come through these devices that is impacting sleep and brain function.
I'm not breaking any news here that we all know alcohol is bad for us, but what do you see about the effects that alcohol can have on the brain over time?
Well, it slows your brain. So if you're an athlete, you want to be consistent, the last thing you want to do is slow your brain. And I think the other thing that is well established is just what it does to your sleep. So when you go to sleep, there's billions of cells in your brain that are supposed to be in rhythm and there's this exquisite dance that occurs throughout the night. All these cells move in rhythm, slow, at times fast, at different states, REM, non-REM. And they're like everything else in the body, there's a timing to that. And so basically, long story short, is alcohol disrupts that timing. So it'll turn out the lights. So you fall asleep and you feel like because the lights went out, it went dark, you fell asleep. But what actually happened at the cellular level did not actually happen. So over time, you're getting damaging sleep.
Let's talk about eating late.
Eating late.
The effect that it can have on brain chemistry.
Eating late disrupts your metabolic rate, and which is heat, and your body and your brain need to cool before they go to sleep. So eating late is another one of those things that's hidden. It would be a thing that you can do, whether you're an adult athlete or a kid growing up, is try not to eat after, say, like 6:30 at the latest, so that your body has a chance to clear and metabolize all of that. So it's basically your body's not distracted any longer as it tries to cool off before going to sleep.
Humans are designed to be on a certain schedule from what we're talking about here.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Eat at this time, go to sleep by this time, wake up at this time.
Yes, light dark cycles, right? We evolved, was before the invention of fire and light, right? We've evolved for millions of years. It was light and then it was dark. And as the longer it is, it is what it is, and we do the best we can. And like, by no means am I perfect on it, but it's the pursuit of trying to hit these benchmarks as much as we can, because for the kids, because they develop and they can perform, and then for those athletes that are trying to, and you'll see guys that are the male and female athletes that are going into their sort of camp or training phase, like they get, during those periods, you see them hit these marks. And it's pretty special. The level of discipline is, it's really a privileged space, and I'm honored to get that many of them let me kind of walk alongside and play my small role in whatever that is. But it's inspiring to see these people lock in for an extended period, and it's extreme. And then to see what they're carrying too. Not only are they carrying their training load and the competitive load, but they also have sponsors and appearances, and just to see how well they navigate these things. And even some of these younger pro surfers, they're like they're not the they're professionals in the way that they approach. It's unlike maybe what we saw in the evolution of surfing in the 80s and 90s.
What I saw in one of the testimonials on your website was Jack Robinson, the Australian pro surfer. He was talking that he didn't have any, it wasn't one major incident that brought him to you, but it was just this kind of feeling that, well, we keep going back to, things weren't timing right. He goes to you. This is what we're talking about here, is the science behind optimized function. Also, the science behind being clutch and having the yips as well.
Yeah.
There's something behind that.
Well, the technical term is called the alpha state. So the alpha state or alpha connection in the brain. So that's been described for probably 50 years in medical neuroscientific literature. And so it's the alpha state, or think of it like high signal, low noise, or extreme organization of the brain cells is what predicts being clutch, right? Being that calm focus, almost like that absence of time that many of these athletes, guys like Jack, they find it. So they're used to finding it, and they're used to training their way into finding it. Guys like that have incredible mental and physical approaches. And so when that becomes more and more, for any number of reasons, more and more difficult to access, you come in and you just kind of fine tune it, and they can kind of tell you about how that, they're easily finding that space again.
I'd love to see Shohei Ohtani's brain activity.
I would love to. Yeah.
Just absolute calm in every big moment, right?
Yeah. Actually, the guys that I would love to see are the professionals that I see that are out there. It's the undersized guys, right? Those are the guys.
Not the genetic super freaks.
Because a couple that I have mapped, it was clear that their advantage was they just have, at baseline, their brain speed or their reaction time is above even the elite athlete. And so that's been my hypothesis for the last probably 5-6 years, and I just need more data to confirm that. So
somebody like Patriots receiver Julian Edelman, famous
Wes
being
Welker,
right?
Edelman, even the baseball guys that are small and performing, but definitely the football guys, because you think how is that guy out there amongst like lions and cheetahs that are unbelievably big and fast, and they find a way through. And I think it's their brain reaction time.
What does the science tell you behind blacking out? Not in a blacking out drunk sort of way, but just you talk about these athletes in clutch moments. You ask them to describe what happened, and it's I can't recall it. I can't remember the specifics. Just being in it,
It's extreme efficiency and coherence, like just in the moment, and that has to do with that alpha state. Being able to find that physiologic state in the brain that is so focused that there's just no other thought or feeling other than that the pitch that's coming, right? Or the basketball player described that the hoop looked this big, right? Yeah.
Thrown it into the ocean.
Or like, the interesting thing is to hear the surfers describe it, because these pro surfers, it's a unique environment as they describe it in many ways, because they've got their board, they got themselves, and they have this, it's not a static surface, it's dynamic. And so when they're locked in, when they lose all time and lose all thought, it's like that the fluctuations in the surface become intuitive, and it's like they're not even paying attention to what's right here. They're actually looking way down the line and already reacting to that while navigating what's underneath them, which truthfully I believe it. I just have I know my own limitations. I'm just amazed at what they do and how they describe it.
Just something to it, to being 3 steps ahead.
I know. If only. If only.
Dr. Jason Keifer with Brain Health Hawaii. Thank you so much. This is a fun conversation.
having me.
Where can people find you?
We have an office in Kahala is where I spend most of the time, but we have a wonderful team. We have an office in Mililani and an office in Kailua as well.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
The science behind sports and high-functioning performance. Dr. Keifer, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
That's another edition of the Long Game Podcast. You can watch this conversation, watch it back, okay? A lot of great insight right here, or you can watch past conversations as well on the H&N streaming app or wherever you get your podcasts. Aloha.